All right, when I say uranium superpower, what's the first country that pops into your head? For almost everyone, it's the same name. But here's the thing. What if that common knowledge is completely based on looking in the rearview mirror? Today, we're going to flip that script. We're going to dig into the data and uncover the real story of who's set to power our future.
Okay, so let's start with the common perception. We'll look at the big, flashy number that everyone points to. The story of the reigning king of uranium seems super straightforward, right? And it all boils down to one simple metric: production.
And wow, this chart. It really seems to say it all, doesn't it? Kazakhstan pumps out a staggering 43% of the world's uranium. I mean, think about that. Nearly half the global supply from just one country. Based on this number, they're the undisputed heavyweight champion. Case closed, right?
So the conclusion seems pretty obvious. But what if we're all looking at the wrong thing? What if we're asking the completely wrong question? What if the most important number isn't the one on that last slide at all?
This is where things get really interesting. We're going to argue that current production, it's not the metric that defines future power, not even close. It's just a snapshot of the past. If you really want to see the future, you have to look at something else entirely. Who is actually finding tomorrow's supply?
And that one question, it changes everything. Seriously, it is the key that unlocks the real power dynamics in the uranium market. It shifts our entire focus away from depletion and towards discovery.
This really breaks it down, doesn't it? There are two completely different mindsets here. On one hand, you have current production, which is basically just looking backward, mining old deposits that have been sitting there for ages. On the other hand, you have new discoveries. That's looking forward. That's finding the supply for tomorrow. Are you just managing a decline, or are you actually building a future? One is just managing an inheritance. The other, that's about creating a legacy.
All right, so let's take this new way of thinking and apply it directly to Kazakhstan's supposed dominance. The moment we stop looking at production and start looking at discovery, a completely different story comes into focus. And it's not a story of innovation, it's a story of inheritance.
Just look at this timeline. It's pretty stark. Every single major uranium deposit that fuels Kazakhstan's production today was found by Soviet geologists decades ago, between the 60s and the 80s. And get this, since 1991, since they became an independent country, they have discovered exactly 0 new uranium provinces. 0.
This brings us to a really important idea. Let's call it inheritance management. Because Kazakhstan's miracle isn't discovery, it's inheritance management. They're not finding new stuff, they're just getting really good at using modern tech to drain a massive resource base that was discovered for them decades ago. So the Kazakh formula is actually pretty simple, and you have to admit it's been effective. Step 1, dust off those old Soviet-era geological maps. Step 2, apply modern, cheap extraction tech like in-situ recovery. And step 3, just ramp up production from all those known deposits. See? It's not a story about exploration at all. It's a story of hyper-efficient exploitation.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. When you produce over 350,000 tons, but only find 40,000 new tons, that's not leadership, it's depletion. They're drawing down their geological bank account way faster than they're making any new deposits. That's not leadership, that is, by definition, depletion.
Okay, so now let's completely switch gears and contrast that story of depletion with what's been going on in Africa. Because while Kazakhstan has been busy mining the past, a totally different story has been unfolding. A story of pure, unadulterated discovery.
I mean, just look at this list. The number of huge, new, world-class discoveries across Africa in just the last couple of decades it's just staggering. You've got the Husad mine in Namibia. That's now one of the biggest mines on the planet. And it didn't even exist 20 years ago. You've got projects in Niger, Tanzania. The list goes on and on. This isn't about inheriting the past. This is about actively, aggressively building the future.
And when you look at the raw numbers, it's just overwhelming. Since the year 2000, Africa has added somewhere between 770,000 and 850,000 tons of new uranium. Kazakhstan, maybe 40 to 60,000. That means Africa has added, get ready for this, between 13 and 21 times more new uranium to the global stockpile than Kazakhstan. Let that sink in. This is not a small gap. It is a massive, continental shift in geological power.
And this right here is the whole story. It's the fundamental difference in trajectory. Kazakhstan is mining the past.
Africa is discovering the future. One is focused on what it's taking out of the ground, the other is defined by what it's finding.
All right, so let's do the final tally. Let's put all of this data head to head and see what the scorecard looks like when we're actually using the metrics that matter for the future. I mean, just look at this comparison. It is devastating. In every single forward-looking metric, new reserves added, major new deposits, new geological provinces, the biggest new discovery, Africa isn't just winning, it is completely, utterly dominant. It is not even a contest.
Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Hey, wait a minute. You can't compare a whole continent to a single country. And you know what? That's a fair point. So let's tackle that argument head on.
Let's make it a fair fight then. Continent versus continent. How does Africa stack up against, say, North America? Well, Africa has more than double the uranium reserves of all of North America combined. That's Canada, the US, and Mexico, put together. The scale of Africa's resource base is just on another level.
So here it is, the key takeaway, the whole thing boiled down. If you want to know who leads uranium today, right now, in this moment, fine, look at production. Kazakhstan wins. But if you want to know who is going to lead for the next 30 years, you have to look at discoveries. And there, Africa wins, by an absolute landslide.
And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. If the evidence is this clear, this overwhelming, why do we always hear about Africa's emerging potential, while Kazakhstan's story of depletion is framed as leadership? Now that is a really interesting question, isn't it?